What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Welcome to our show today. It is Tuesday, April 6, 2021, and we've got a lot to talk about today. As usual, we're going to do an hour of news, followed by opening up the phone lines for your comments, questions, and opinions and observations. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials and keeping us out of trouble. And let's just get right on into it, because there is a lot of interesting things happening. Now, there is a new poll out there that basically is showing, and this poll was taken March 30th and 31st, 60% of Republicans want Trump to run in 2024, saying the election was stolen, which is kind of a study in foregone conclusions here. And Trump himself has halted any more work on his presidential library to send the message that his administration is not yet quite over. And so that's a very strong message indeed. Meanwhile, Republicans are thinking of running Trump for the House of Representatives next year, 2022, and then install him as Speaker of the House, which would give him a great deal of power and authority. So we see what's going to happen there as well. Getting on to the Hunter Biden scandal, and it does seem like there's definitely a there. Hunter Biden says he's fully cooperating with the federal investigation into his taxes, and he insists he has never given his father, Joe Biden, any money from his international business deals. Now, Joe Biden continues to deny any knowledge or involvement of that, but one of Hunter Biden's former business partners already went to the FBI saying he had 3 cell phones to prove that Hunter and Joe were in communication about what was going on in Ukraine and China. And the federal probe into this corruption began in 2018, but was not released to the public until after the 2020 presidential elections. Even then, they were protecting him. Story coming out of Hideout Now, the president's son Hunter admits he got a $50,000 a month job on the board of Burisma because of his family name. The Biden name was gold to them, and his job consisted basically of arranging introductions, for which he got this $50,000 a month. I mean, that's more than most Americans are making in an entire year. Getting on to more local stuff here, a story coming out of rumble.com, and it's talking about the woke corporations and how they are posing an even greater threat to American liberties than big government is. And corporate America is becoming a vehicle for this toxic cultural poison that we all suffer underneath. And again, nobody elected corporations to be setting public policy or to basically be controlling our lives, other than to offer us a product or service which we can or may choose not to avail ourselves of. That's what commerce is all about. Now, Justice Clarence Thomas is signaling that he is ready to go after social media, Twitter in specific. He's going to go after Section 230, and he is now out there stating that social media companies may not have a First Amendment right to regulate online speech. And that being one of the arguments social media has made, is that their users may not have First Amendment rights, but they have a First Amendment right to control what goes through their channels or not. So Thomas is calling them common carriers and places of public accommodation, and this is a rebuke of the massive overreach that Twitter, Facebook, and the other tech tyrants have used to impose their political ideologies on America. Over at the United States Supreme Court, they have rejected a petition filed on behalf of Alex Jones of InfoWars. It signals yet again the court is ripe to consider recognizing a hate speech exception to the First Amendment guarantee of freedom of speech. Now, there are no exceptions in the Bill of Rights. but they're trying to chip away at the First Amendment. They're certainly chipping away at the Second Amendment. They're basically taking away the nation that the Founding Fathers created for all of us. Now, Alex Jones offered a reward on his broadcast show for the identity of the person or persons who sent his studio child pornography via the internet. And he raised a question about whether counsel opposing him in litigation was involved. Now, he never accused anyone of sending the material. His speech was angry and emotional, which is Alex Jones' style. So the plaintiff lawyers ran to the trial court asking for sanctions. The court obliged, refusing to hear Alex Jones' motion to dismiss the lawsuit resulting from the child porn. And then, again, we have seen that happen so many times before, where child porn gets planted on a computer and the authorities get sicked after the person in order to silence them or shame them. There's a story over in the Moscow Times. Google is now censoring search results in Russia. And they're censoring their certain entries in accordance with long-standing demands from the authorities. Russia fined Google $7,500 in November 2018 for failing to take down certain search results. New regulations went into effect in November 2017, require search engines to delete results to websites blacklisted by Russia's communications regulator, Roskomnadzor. Okay. Here's an interesting little situation, and I don't know where this is really coming from or what they're thinking here, but the Supreme Court is scheduled to hear a First Amendment case on April 28th. And the case is basically to rule that students do not have a right to free speech off of campus. Now, we've been talking about this for quite some time, that students and faculty, for that matter, are being punished and chastised for things that they will say or post or write when they're not in school, when they're acting as a private citizen. But the Department of Justice and the Anti-Defamation League, which we know hates the First Amendment, they're calling on the Supreme Court to rule that students do not have freedom of speech off campus. So the case is BL versus Mahoney Area School District, and a 14-year-old girl was punished by her administrators at her school for writing blank school, blank softball, blank cheer, blank everything on Snapchat after failing to make the varsity cheer team. And she was subsequently disciplined by her junior varsity squad after a tattletale showed the message to the coach. Now, I'm a real supporter of the First Amendment, and while her post may be tasteless and certainly prompted by anger and frustration, she has a right to say it. And likewise, everybody else has a right to say, I think you're out of line. But that's what free speech really is. So, established legal precedents allow public schools to police what students say during school hours. These are cases like Tinker versus Des Moines Independent Community School District, defend the right of free speech off of campus, and now they want to take that away. Okay. Since the protests at the Capitol on January 6th, we have seen a lot of propaganda about, bad Trump supporters and all these horrible things that happened. But the Department of Justice has now quietly admitted there was no sedition at the U.S. Capitol. Now, the sedition is the act of attempting to overthrow the government. Has to be proved on actual facts, and basically the people who broke into the Capitol building, and in some cases they were allowed in by the police on the ground. There were videotapes of that. They went on in and they took selfies, and that was really about it. And actually proving sedition is going to be extraordinarily difficult in those cases, and the Department of Justice is saying, well, maybe not. All right, Black Lives Matter activist Maya Eccles, who's also a signed model with IMG Worldwide, made a TikTok video saying that cities will burn if police officer Derek Chauvin is not convicted in the death of drug addict and thief George Floyd. She said that all heck is going to break loose. So that's getting ugly. Up in Alaska, GOP Senator Lisa Murkowski, who voted to convict Trump in his second impeachment trial, is now running 15 points behind her GOP challenger, Kelly Tshibaka, after that vote on Donald Trump. So she definitely annoyed the voters for that one. Meanwhile, speaking of Donald Trump, last Saturday, Donald Trump urged Republicans and conservatives to fight back and boycott the big corporations that have attacked Georgia's recent election law. Trump said in a statement put out by the Save America PAC that for years the radical left Democrats have played dirty by boycotting products when anything from the company is done or stated in any way that offends them. Now they are going big time with the woke cancel culture and our sacred elections. And Trump said it's finally time for the Republicans and conservatives to fight back. I agree with him. We have more people than they do by far. So boycott Major League Baseball, boycott Coca-Cola, boycott Delta Airlines, boycott JP Morgan Chase, boycott Viacom CBS, boycott Citigroup, Cisco, United Parcel Service, and Merck. Don't go back to their products until they relent and go back to just being corporations instead of trying to be part of the ruling class. Okay. By the way, little side note, Coca-Cola required a picture ID to get into their 2020 shareholder meeting. And yet at the same time, they're out there slamming Georgia for requiring a picture ID to vote. Same thing with Delta Airlines. You got to show a picture ID to pick up your ticket and get on their airplanes. But by golly, if you're going to vote, no ID required here. Story coming on out of PatriotRising.com. It's called Jumping the Shark, Peak Woke. What were the executives of these mighty companies thinking, these knights of the boardroom, these capitalist geniuses, these moral nonpareils, when they canceled Atlanta's turn to host the Midsummer All-Star Game to protest Georgia's passage of a law that requires voter ID? Surely that they were striking a righteous blow against systematic racism, and then the rest of the world realized almost immediately that Major League Baseball requires online ticket buyers to show their ID when they pick up their tickets at the stadium. So again, it's just pure hypocrisy. Here's an interesting little story. This is from Zero Hedge. Over in Beverly Hills, there was a strip mall business called U.S. Private Vaults, and it rented anonymous safety deposit boxes, and the FBI raided them recently and required the customers to reveal their identities to get the contents of their safety deposit boxes back. And the FBI has accused U.S. Private Vaults of laundering money for drug dealers who anonymously stashed guns, drugs, and cash. So, better solution, keep it at home. Okay, getting on to the COVID situation. Today is the first day that the statewide mandate for face masks here in Indiana has gone away, which was really good. Although when Claire and I went out for our morning errands, we saw only one other person who was not wearing a mask. The post office, it's still required. Holiday foods for the employees, it's still required. A lot of people are still wearing the mask as a force of habit or whatever. But I think in the coming days, we're going to see more and more people not bothering with these masks. Meanwhile, Fauci is saying that the U.S. will not require COVID-19 vaccine passports. And he's saying that they will not use vaccine passports to prove immunization against the coronavirus. Now, what they're talking about doing, though, is shifting it on to businesses to enforce the vaccine passports. Meanwhile, over in New York, their vaccine passport system is already falling apart. And New York's rollout of its passport already has the markings of a 5-alarm dumpster fire. The New York State Excelsior Pass vaccine passport system, which was created by IBM, has so many issues that it would not be surprising if the program was scrapped altogether before the end of the calendar year. All right. Now, Mississippi has joined Florida in saying there will not be vaccine passports required to live your life in that state. Governor of Mississippi, Reeves, basically said it's not necessary, and it's not a good thing to do in America. Absolutely correct about that. Texas has become the third state to declare that they are not going to go with vaccine passports. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has become the latest to ban the vaccine passports because residents shouldn't need proof to go about their daily lives. And he added, don't tread on our personal freedoms. And he's certainly right about that one. Story coming on out of the Daily Mail in Great Britain. One of the European drug regulator's senior officials basically came on out and said there is now a clear link between AstraZeneca's COVID jab and blood clots, and they're claiming that the United Kingdom will not ban the vaccine for under 30s amid review over its safety in younger adults. And they're still baffled about how the jab can trigger the rare complication. But again, everybody's DNA is completely unique, and they're trying to inject everybody with this one-size-fits-all mRNA vaccine, or even the Johnson & Johnson with the DNA strand. You can't really know how it's going to react inside the body with all the possible permutations of DNA it's going to encounter. Righty. Residents of a suburban New York City county sued the World Health Organization in April a year ago, accusing the health body of negligence over how it provided information to the public and responded to the pandemic. U.S. District Judge Kathy Siebel dismissed the class action lawsuit yesterday, filed by 7 New York-based plaintiffs who accused the World Health Organization of said negligence. Now, here is an interesting story, and it's coming out of the Daily Caller, and they're talking about how there was a grant given to the Wuhan lab by the United States specifically to enhance bat-based coronaviruses. It was never scrutinized by Health and Human Services Review Board, according to the National Institute of Health. So this oversight board was created to scrutinize research that would enhance highly dangerous pathogens, but they did not review the National Institute of Health grant that funded a lab in Wuhan, China, to genetically modify bat-based coronaviruses. So we're getting back to the theory that COVID-19 was a bioweapon in progress, and somebody dropped a test tube. And it got out of the building that way, and everybody panicked on that one. The FBI is back out there sending out a warning advising against buying, making, or misrepresenting a vaccine card, which may be breaking the law. They're saying maybe, apparently there isn't a law yet against copying a vaccine card, and frankly, to judge by the one that Claire and I were given when we got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, they're going to be very easy to copy. I mean, our credit cards are far more secure than these vaccine certificates. Professor Martin Kulldorff is out there saying that we cannot afford to censor dissenting voices during a pandemic. Professor Kulldorff has told the UK government and its scientific advisors exactly who should they be listening to and why if they want to save lives, and it doesn't include vaccinating the entire population, including children. Okay. All right, turning to the international. Oh, we got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to talk about the international news now. And Biden regime forces continue to loot Syria of essential grains, which are necessary to keep Syria's people from the starvation over which the various factions of Western savior types continue to wail rivers of crocodile tears, especially when there is a 501c charity involvement. The Biden American occupation forces just did another round trip from Iraq into the Al Yarubiyah area of El Hasaka, which is in Syria, which is not in the United States, with a 12-truck convoy that continued the looting of precious Syrian grain from the silos of Tel Alo. Now, starvation via military invasion and looting is a war crime. We need to keep that in mind. Now, the Biden forces dismantled their illicit military base in the silos in February. The criminal American troops have returned several times to empty the grain, so many times that it might be convenient to create a template and just fill in the dates about when they show up to do that. Another article along the same line here. This is from Zero Hedge. Why U.S. troops will never be pulled out of Syria. And they're saying no, they're going to garrison Syria. It costs very little. They incur hardly any casualties. We reported the other day where the Pentagon has a bunch of contracts regarding Syria, where if the troops leave prematurely, there'll be all kinds of penalties imposed. So they're going to stay in Syria, even though the Syrian government doesn't want them there. The Syrian people certainly don't want them there. Now, cooperation between Turkey and Russia in matters of defense and intelligence has never been smiled on by the United States, particularly when Turkey moved to purchase the S-400 Russian-made air defense missile system. And at that point, Washington began threats to impose sanctions on Ankara. Well, they've gone ahead and done it for so-called significant transactions with Russia. This is coming from the State Department, and the U.S. has announced that it will sanction Turkey's SSB and 4 top officials for ties with the Russian defense and intelligence sector. Well, that is certainly going to drive Turkey away from the American sphere of influence. It's a very short-sighted decision, I think. Getting on to Ukraine, and so far there hasn't been a big bang, a lot of little bangs here. But there's an article, this one is coming out of Russia Today, about how Ukraine joining NATO would not only benefit Kiev, but would also serve to strengthen the U.S.-led bloc. Ukraine has become a shield for Europe, and the troubled country's accession to NATO would bolster the organization, according to Kiev's military chief, Ruslan Homchak, who wants the state to become a full-fledged member. Anyway, another article on the same line here. This is from the original antiwar.com. Why is the Biden administration pushing Ukraine to attack Russia? This was written by Ron Paul. On March 24th, Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky signed what was essentially a declaration of war on Russia. In the document titled Presidential Decree number 117/2021, the U.S.-backed Ukrainian leader declared it is the official policy of Ukraine to take back Crimea from Russia. Remember what I said about a week ago? Crimea is the red flag. If Ukraine goes into Crimea, Russia will be forced to respond. Okay. A story coming on out of UNS.com, War in Donbass update. The Ukrainian buildup on the border continues. Wheeling in all those guns and equipment and letting them stand idle is expensive. America has sent a cargo ship which is unloading more equipment in Odessa, and a global hawk is making overflights over the Black Sea. And so it does look like something is getting ready to happen there. It's just a question of when. And the Donbass has a new martyr. Today in the Donetsk People's Republic, one of the most difficult funerals took place. 5-year-old Vladik was killed by a shell dropped from a drone by Ukrainian punishers. And they had the funeral, was a closed casket because the little boy was actually torn into pieces by the bomb. And this is inflaming tensions in that Donbass area. Now, the other day we talked about how Gazprom in Russia was starting to slowly reduce the amount of gas flowing through the pipeline that goes through Ukraine into Europe to send a message. And now Poland, in order to keep their gas needs met, is now pulling back on the reverse gas flow back to Ukraine. See, the way this works is Russia sends the gas through the pipeline to Poland. Poland sends part of it back to Ukraine. Kiev is blaming Russia for this, saying that this is an attempt to exercise economic pressure on them. Now, Matt Taibbi came out with an interesting article called The Master List of Official Russian Claims That Proved to Be Bogus. And it's a very, very long list, and I suggest you read it. We got to take another break for commercials, and we will be right back. Welcome back to our show here, and we're talking about the international news. Over in Iran, their top negotiator, Abbas Araghchi, in an interview with Press TV, said the United States must lift its anti-Iran sanctions all at once in one step if it really wants to rejoin the 2015 P5+1 nuclear agreement, which the U.S. pulled out of 3 years ago. Now, Araghchi served as Deputy Foreign Minister for Political Affairs, was interviewed by Press TV outside the venue of a joint session of the a session of the Joint Commission of the Iran Deal, officially called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action in Vienna, Austria. And he's basically saying, you know, the P5+1 deal called for the lifting of U.S. sanctions. The U.S. did not lift the sanctions. If they want to get back into the deal, the time to lift the sanctions is now. I think it was just yesterday we reported on how a Chinese aircraft carrier strike group is now sailing into Japanese waters under the justification that U.S. and Japanese incursions into Chinese waters justify that. Well, now Japan has sent a destroyer, a maritime patrol aircraft, and an anti-submarine warfare patrol aircraft to basically shadow the Chinese strike group and keep an eye on it. Meanwhile, and this is a little alarming story coming on out of Zero Hedge, new legislation is being considered in Japan that would alter the current Japan Coast Guard policy regarding how it engages foreign vessels in Japan's water, and it could inadvertently start a shooting war with China, because the new legislation would allow the Japanese Coast Guard to fire on Chinese vessels. That's always a bad idea. All right. China has filled the disputed South China Sea with more than 200 boats lashed together in rows in an act of aggression designed to squeeze out other countries in Asia. And at issue, I think, probably are the fishing grounds. But again, they're definitely trying to draw a border with all these boats and lashings. Over in Paris, Parisians have turned on their socialist mayor with a Twitter campaign where they were accusing her of gross mismanagement, which has left Paris looking like a rubbish dump. Now, thousands of pictures have emerged on social media in the past few days of piles of rubbish filling the streets of the historic city under the hashtag Trash Paris. Parisians have claimed the city has been left abandoned by their socialist mayor Anne Hidalgo, and they're fed up with living in an unmaintained dump that some are referring to as a shanty town. We had a caller last week mention this, and here's another story on the same line. The Marine Corps is beginning the shutdown of all their tank battalions, and so this represents the end of the Marine Corps tank missions. It's officially begun. Marines with the 1st Tank Battalion watched the last of their unit's tanks depart 29 Palms, California. Photos taken of the event show Marines surrounding an oversized flatbed as the tanks were loaded up onto the vehicle and driven away. Less than 2 weeks later, Alpha Company 4th Tank Battalion held a deactivation ceremony at Camp Pendleton, California. The unit is the first of several companies with 4th tanks facing deactivation this summer. The changes are part of an aggressive plan the Marine Corps top general set in place early this year called Force Design 2030. The plan, leaders say, will set Marines up for future fights, defending ships while at sea and operating in hotly contested spots near the shore. So they're changing that. I wonder who's getting all those old tanks. That's a big question for me. All right. We talked about this before, but there's another article, this one coming out of military.com, talking about for aspiring transgenders, the Pentagon's new policies are basically making their dreams come true because these transgenders who cannot afford the surgery on their own, all they have to do is join the military, and you, the American taxpayer, are going to pay for their hormone treatments and their surgeries to make them into whatever it is they think they're being made into. Okay, let's talk about the economy for a little bit. The IMF has introduced their own currency. They're calling it the world currency. They're going to print it on a large scale, $650 billion to begin with. And this start of a world currency means that the US dollar, which is the global reserve currency right now, is officially in decline. All right. Another little story, this one out of Investment Watch blog. Yes, the Fed will cover Biden's $4 trillion deficit. Now, the Fed isn't just making up the money to pay these bills. It constitutes a loan to you, the American people. So take $4 trillion divided by the population of working Americans, and that's how much in future taxes plus interest you'll be paying for the Federal Reserve's largesse. All righty. Now, Biden's Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is calling for a global minimum corporate tax. This is partly to fund the $2.3 trillion infrastructure plan, which doesn't really deal with that much infrastructure. They want to deter companies moving to tax-friendly economies. This is not going to work. When the U.S. ramps up their corporate taxes, these other countries are going to say, look, we're tax friendly. They're going to take advantage of that to pillage the best of American corporations and bring them to their home territory. This is a very, very bad idea, but I understand why Yellen and Biden are pushing for this. They're broke. They're in debt. And their only solution is to raise taxes on anything they can raise taxes on. Until finally somebody stands up and says, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to move to another country with better taxes, better policies. At some point, I'm expecting the U.S. government to pass laws saying that you can't move to a tax-friendly environment either as an individual or as a business. Story coming on out of Tech Republic, there's a new survey out there saying that if work from home ends, which started a year ago when COVID-19 first became popularized, and a lot of companies are still operating remotely. They've cut back on their office space to save money. And the new survey is showing that 1 in 3 employees will quit their current job if they're told work from home ends, and they're going to have to go back to working in the office, to the traditional office. The survey was conducted on Blind, an anonymous network for professionals, and it was trying to understand how the switch back to the in-person office could impact employee turnover if the great remote work experience were to conclude. All right, getting on to immigration and globalism. Remember when the Democrats called GOP leader Kevin McCarthy a liar for claiming terrorists were crossing the border amid the Biden border surge? Well, guess what? They should apologize. They won't, but they should, because two military-aged males from Yemen who are on the FBI's terrorism watch list as well as on the no-fly list were arrested after illegally crossing the U.S. border. And Customs and Border Patrol agents arrested the Yemeni men a few miles from the Calexico port of entry in California. And part of the Border Patrol's mission states, "We will protect the country from terrorists," according to Chief Patrol Agent Gregory Bovino. So, yeah, they are coming on. And for every one they catch, there's probably 10 that got through undetected. The federal government, the immigration people, are now looking at considering California's Long Beach Convention Center as an emergency migrant shelter. It's a big, big building. I've been there myself. And San Diego's political leaders have allowed the federal government to use the San Diego Convention Center as an illegal immigrant shelter to address the border crisis. And now they're talking about going up to Long Beach and using that convention center. So next up will be the Los Angeles Convention Center and then the San Francisco Convention Center. It is totally out of control. Getting into the wokeness story here, there is a report that came on out in Britain. It's titled "Birth to 5 Matters," and it said that British toddlers in nurseries need to be taught anti-racism, not just equality, because equality is not anti-racist enough. This gets back to critical race theory, where they want to reverse the order and say that the whites are the second-class citizen and all the other colors are above them, and it's nonsense. I'm all in favor of equality of opportunity. I think is a very, very important thing. Mandating equality of outcome has been very, very destructive in our society. And now they're talking about brainwashing little toddlers with this critical race theory. And this report from the Early Years Coalition basically said that this is how to teach all nurseries Birth to 5 Matters, flagged as guidance by the sector, for the sector. An important note, as none of this is the idea of the government, it's just their unsolicited viewpoint. Over at the University of Cincinnati, a graduate assistant has written a report saying that intelligence is a white man's mythology. And Mel Andrews, who studies cognition and evolution, says, stop calling your female colleagues smart or clever or brilliant. It's sexist and infantilizing. It shouldn't surprise you in 2021 that women are capable of thought. And it says intelligence is a white man's mythology, a phantasmal concept, a non-referring term, indicating that the post was entirely serious. It was followed by an excerpt from a chapter Andrews wrote from a book called Handbook of Parenting. So apparently now intelligence is white whatever. In other news, we've been following this story of this wastewater retention pond in Manatee County, Florida, and they're trying to drain this phosphate wastewater, which is also radioactive, as quickly as they can out of concern that the berm holding this pond in could collapse. And now one of the core drones with thermal imaging capabilities overnight has detected a possible second breach in the gypsum walls surrounding the pond on the Piney Point industrial site. More than 300 homes surround the site, which was once home to a fertilizer plant. They were ordered evacuated over the weekend. So that's what happens when you don't take care of the infrastructure. Getting into space and science news, up on Mars, the little Mars helicopter Ingenuity has started testing out its cameras. It's opened its eyes. And the 4-pound chopper snapped its first color photograph on Saturday, shortly after being lowered to the Martian dirt by the Perseverance rover. And the tableau shows the floor of Mars' Jezero crater and a portion of 2 wheels of the Perseverance rover. And they're saying now that, yes, the first flight will occur on April 11th, which is going to be very, very exciting. Elon Musk has revealed that a relatively small methane leak is what caused Starship SN-11 to explode during its first high-altitude flight, and it's exactly the same reason that SN-10 burst into flames weeks earlier. So they've identified the problem, but not soon enough to prevent that second explosion. So Elon Musk shared details on Twitter, saying a relatively small methane leak led to the demise. And Musk tweeted the methane leak caused one of the 3 Raptor engines to catch fire, which fried part of the avionics system. Okay, now, he said, getting on to some other news. Apparently, let's see, getting on back to COVID, the government of Chile has announced they're once again closing their national borders and going back into lockdown because of COVID. Okay, we're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines here. So let me tell our control room. And the phone number is area code 512-248-8252. And looking to, let's see, more news. A lot of, George Soros is pledging $20 million to pressure Biden to continue the far left agenda, including, no surprise, raising taxes on the middle class. Now, there's a lot of members of Congress have already come down and say they're opposed to raising taxes on the wealthy and on corporations, and they can't raise taxes on the poor because the poor don't have anything. So who's going to get the tax bill? The middle class. What's left of them. Okay. Let's see. We talked about that. All righty. The former commissioner of the FDA says the United States is not in the 4th wave of COVID-19, and we're not going to see one. All right, we're going to start taking phone calls now, and we're going to go to Kelly in Texas. Hello, Kelly. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I heard about that problem in Florida and the radioactive water, and I wasn't sure what the cause of it was until you mentioned it was phosphate water. That's uranium. Uranium binds up with phosphate in those deposits in Florida.
Yes.
And it's actually it's concentrated enough that it can be processed to get enough uranium to be used in a reactor. If they can concentrate that enough.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've done a lot of work in Florida, and it's just hard to find a place in Florida where there's not a lot of uranium or thorium in the soil. In fact, there's so much uranium and thorium in phosphatic deposits in particular in Florida that back in the 1950s, what was called at that time the Atomic Energy Commission, considered using those deposits as sources of uranium for the nuclear weapons program.
Okay, Kelly, I got to put you on hold. Don't go away. Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. Welcome back to our show here. And again, the phone lines are open. Area code 512-248-8252. We're talking with Kelly in Texas. We're talking about the radioactivity that is in the water that they're trying to get out of that phosphate waste pool before it collapses and floods those 300 homes. So, Kelly, if you could pick up where you left off.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of uranium in Florida. And
yes.
It's there for the same reason that it forms roll front deposits in Texas. Uranium likes to bind up with organic matter when it hits a redox boundary. It's floating around in an oxidized state as hexavalent uranium, and it hits a redox boundary and it drops off, and it forms the uranium oxide deposits, or
yes.
whatever it binds up with. And so that's how we get these roll front uranium deposits here in Texas and elsewhere. And in Florida, it's just that there was a lot of organophosphates at the bottom of the sea many years ago. And when the uranium comes in through a groundwater system, it sees those phosphate deposits and it says, home, I'm here.
Okay.
So that's what happens. So that's exactly why it's there. There's a lot of uranium in Florida. People don't realize that, but there's a lot of uranium down there. A lot of uranium and a lot of thorium. I remember I've consulted on a number of issues down in Florida involving radioactivity and groundwater. And the regulators are always surprised to find out that there's a lot of uranium, thorium, and radium naturally occurring in the sediments. And it just baffles them. They don't seem to understand why it's there. They want to think that somebody put it there. Nobody put it there but Mother Nature. So,
I kind of wonder, what are the cancer rates in Florida?
I don't really know. I haven't really followed that up, to tell you the truth. But if you're drinking a lot of water that hasn't been treated, for example, if you have a water well and it's pulling water out of something that has uranium, radium, or whatever else, I don't know. It could be pretty high, but I really haven't heard there's anything in Florida that's unusual. So you have to mobilize that somehow to get it out. And that would require, say, oxidizing conditions to get it into a mobile state, a hexavalent state. But I just thought you might want to know that that's where it's coming from. Nobody put it there. It's there because it's in the sediments naturally. That's all I got to tell you.
All right. Well, thank you very much here, and thank you for the phone call. The phone lines are now open. Area code 512-248-8252. And, getting on back to the economic news, it does look like, well, there's two things. One, the dollar is definitely in trouble with this massive overprinting that we're seeing from the Federal Reserve to pay for all this so-called infrastructure, which isn't going to be that much infrastructure, by the way, but it's a huge amount of money, and it is inflationary. And so as a result, the value of the dollar internationally, there's a lot of downward pressure on that right now. And the news coming out of the IMF that they're going to issue their own global currency is troubling. Okay, we got to take a break for station identification. Join us on the air, 512-248-8252, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2, the phone lines are open. Area code 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Bruce in Texas. Hello, Bruce. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, I just want to respond real quickly. I noticed it's Florida I'm talking about, but in Texas and I believe up north where there's another shale oil field in North Dakota, a lot of the uranium contamination comes from fracking. And I used to be in the fracking field myself. So let's not think that all that and I don't believe you can filter out those radioactive elements out of water once it's been exposed.
Well, you can with centrifuges because of the mass that's involved. I mean, that's how they, get heavy water. That's how they enrich uranium. It's just costly to do, and nobody wants to spend the money.
Yeah. I know there was a huge deal in North Dakota about the vacuum trucks that would pull out the water out of the frack water out of the well tanks. They were improperly disposing of the filters, and the filters are full of radioactive elements.
Yes, there's been a big problem with that.
Big problem. And also in South Texas. South Texas has a lot of old uranium mines. And so you start fracking and cracking that rock, you're just mixing the two together.
Well, it's even worse than that. We had somebody call into the show who was part of the fracking industry who said the fracking companies actually contract with other corporations to get rid of their wastewater, including radioactive wastewater that they can't get rid of any other place. And the idea is they're going to pump it deep into the ground and sort of hope that it never percolates back up to the surface again.
Yeah, that's what I did. I operated a vacuum truck out in the oil field.
Okay.
And we were never advised that what we were handling had any kind of cancer risk.
Mm-hmm.
So there you are. Okay, That's all I got for today. I appreciate you taking my call.
All right. Well, thank you for the call. We're going to go over to Mark in North Carolina. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, really what I want to do is I want to ask you something more than what I got to say, because I know what I believe, and it's, hopefully I'm right. Do you think that this country, or at least the leadership of this country, are really crazy enough to get involved if Russia decides they've had enough and they're going to either take back the eastern portion of the Ukraine or even swallow up the whole Ukraine? Do you think this country the leadership in this country is crazy enough to take us?
Yeah, I do.
War?
I absolutely do. And again, this goes back to the project for the New American Century in the 1990s, and they're still around. They've got a different name now. But they were arguing for basically an entire century of unending wars to bring the rest of the world under the control of the United States. And, probably a lot of the war planners and politicians are looking back at the propaganda record of how the U.S. won World War I and the U.S. won World War II, and, we are unbeatable and we're so forth and so on, which is not exactly accurate, I might add. And they may just feel that they'll prevail one way or the other.
Yeah, but these psychopaths, when they came up with that, Russia was just had, dissolved the Soviet Union, and Russia was in a pretty bad shape at that time.
Yes.
Today, Russia is a superpower again.
Yes.
Not only because of nukes, but because of maybe the best army in the world today, and some of the best weapons. And the fact of the matter is, just the ground defeat in and around Ukraine and that part of Eastern Europe, what would that say? It would defeat their own purposes. And I know you people are crazy, but do you think they're crazy enough to then go to the next level and start a nuclear war? I mean,
that's the big unknown. I mean, look how close we came during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right, but we had level-headed leaders on both sides. Now, you do have a level leader on the Russian side in Putin.
Yes.
There's only so much he's going to put up with. Okay? And
yes.
He's being leaned on by people in his own country. And remember, the eastern part of Ukraine, most of Ukraine, is really Russian. It's
yes.
Russia for hundreds of years. Crimea is Russian for hundreds of years. The people are loyal to Russia. I just don't know. I mean, this is, and by the way, the Ukraine, this guy, Walensky or whatever his name, Zelensky,
yes.
who really runs Ukraine are a bunch of you talk about the Nazis, literal neo-Nazis. Literal neo-Nazis.
Yes.
So here, they talk about, we got to fight the Nazis here in the United States. We got to fight the far right, the racists, all this stuff. And there you're supporting actual Nazis and possibly going to World War III over this. I just don't know. As mad as these people are, I don't know. If you remember, back in 2008, I believe, Bush was still president.
Yes.
When Russia got into it with Georgia. And, most people thought they were going to incorporate Georgia back into Russia. I thought so, too, because I didn't know that much about Putin at the time, that he just wanted to do it. Instead, all they wanted to do was keep Georgia from attacking South or Ossetia, something like
yes,
that.
Yes, Ossetia.
And they were trying to
okay?
But, I mean, I remember even Bush, with all the neocons, Cheney and Rumsfeld and all the other neocons, down to Lisa Rice, they made it clear they were not going to intervene. They were not going to, militarily intervene. They made that very clear.
Well, I think if Kiev goes into the Donbass, I think Russia will treat it as an internal affair. But if Ukraine goes into Crimea, Putin's not going to have any choice. He's going to have to respond.
I don't think they're going to treat it like with the Donbass like that either. I think he's going to, because those are basically Russians. They're counting on. He's made them since the last crisis. He's made them Russian citizens. They have Russian citizens. Okay? He's not going to allow that. I'm telling you, Mike. And what's going to happen at that point, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. You really do think that we've got leaders that are crazy enough that
Yeah.
they're going to confront Russia physically.
You know, because they've got their bunkers. They know when the nukes start flying, you know, they're going to go underground and to their little, you know, luxurious bunkers, you know, with wall-to-wall TVs and dried food and everything. I mean, you've got the Greenbriers, you've got Mount Weather, you've got the other one that's for the Supreme Court justices. I forget the name of it.
I think if this happened, Mike, before they got a chance to get into those bunkers, I think Americans would tear these people apart limb by limb. There would be right on the streets. We'd probably hang them by lampposts before the nukes land. I really don't believe the American people would let this happen. Just and let them get away with that.
Well, I hope you're right. I really do hope you're right.
This is terrible. I mean, this is really, you know, I mean, as if we don't have enough to be concerned about with all this, lockdowns and all this garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, now you've got governors really standing up to it, and even countries that are now standing up against it. And now we got to deal with the potential of World War III, possible nuclear annihilation. I mean, you know, it's just too much. But anyway, that's really all I wanted to really ask you about, Mike. I wanted to see that you actually do think we've got madmen, you know, crazy enough to do this.
I do. Because after all, they did go ahead and drop the nukes on Japan.
Oh, yeah, but the Japanese didn't have anything to drop the nukes on us. We dropped one nuke on Russia. Russia has the ability to wipe us off. Well, both of us have the ability to wipe each other off the face of the map.
Mm-hmm.
The map. And China,
Yes.
China would get involved, and there'd be no Europe. I don't know if there'd be a planet left. I mean, it's not the same thing as dropping it on hapless Japan, who couldn't answer it because they didn't have nukes. All right?
Yes.
They were pretty much defeated already at the time. So, I mean, to start something with Russia. I mean, we're worried about Iran getting nukes.
Yes.
Best they could do is maybe get a few, 2, 3, 4, 5. They'd be a threat to Israel if Israel decides to launch their own, okay? But they wouldn't be a threat to us.
Nope.
Like North Korea is not really a threat to us because you have just too few. You're talking about a country that's with a landmass that's twice at least the size of the United States, that includes Alaska and Hawaii.
Yes.
And the ability to launch missiles, not only their own country, but also from the North Pole.
Yes.
They've got nuclear subs all over the place, some of the most advanced weaponry imaginable, and probably maybe the best Army man-for-man in the world today. I don't know about Air Force. I think we outnumber quite a bit with planes, but their missile technology, neutralizes whatever air superiority we might have. And I'm not even sure we have the air superiority because their planes are probably better than ours.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the disaster, the F-35 has become. F-22 still has a limited ceiling because of breathing problems of the pilots. Yeah, we spend more money on weapons, but we're not getting the bang for our buck.
And look at the military today. I mean, you just said transsexuals, they're going to get operations and stuff like that, cut their private parts off. I mean, this is just sick, Mike. I just don't know what to say anymore, really. I'm losing total respect for this country. I like to consider myself a patriot, but I can't be a patriot to stuff like this. I just can't.
Well, remember, a patriot is loyal to his country at all times and to the government only when it deserves it.
Well, I mean, maybe I should just say to the government. I can't be loyal to this government. There's no way. If my kids were that age now, they're one of my sons did go into the military for a few years. I didn't discourage him at the time because I bought the nonsense about 9/11. I realize now 9/11 was BS, an excuse to get us into more wars. But if they wanted to go in today, I'd advise them no way. Or if my grandkids were old enough, they're not old enough. You got quite a way to go. I tell them no way. Stay out of the military. All right. It's not protecting the United States anymore. It's taking care of the interests of big corporations, international globalist corporations. That's all it's doing. And, that's about it, Mike. So,
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We have phone lines open right now. Area code 512-248-8252. And we're going to go to Al in Canada. Hello, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I hope you don't mind. I wanted to change the subject to computers.
Okay.
Specifically building them, as I don't know if you posted anything about it on your website or not, because I haven't seen anything. There's a massive shortage of semiconductors right now.
Yes.
And obviously it has to do with this virus. And they're saying that this won't be corrected until mid 2022. So what that means is it's not just computers, but this affects everything that uses,
everything that uses a chip. I mean, cars, TVs,
anything that uses
kitchen appliances,
integrated circuits, right? Even just like a little op amp, operational amplifier. I mean, this is crazy. So all this new stuff that is quote come out recently for computers, it's non-existent. Because I've been waiting now I've been sitting on a ton of cash because I want to upgrade my computer.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff's just not there. The video cards aren't there. The processors aren't there. And whatever is there, of course, it's being bought and sold on eBay and Kijiji and it's like these other places, right?
Yeah.
Or for ridiculous prices.
Yes.
And of course there's crypto mining, right?
Mm-hmm.
Video cards are great for that.
Yes.
Anyway, so it's a real problem, and it's a big problem for me because I use Dolby Atmos. I don't know if anybody else even knows what that is. So I'm taking the sound out of my video card.
Yeah.
And I'm going into into an amp. I'm using a Denon, right? Like a 7.2 amp. So 7 speakers, two subs. It's all stereo, right? You got the fronts, you got the sides, you got the rears, and then you got the center. You can have a center on both sides, right? The front and the back. Anyway, to make a long story kind of shorter, AMD, when they moved to this 5700 XT video card, there's a huge flaw in it. Whereas Dolby Atmos, if you're using Dolby Atmos, and not everything is in Dolby Atmos, right, Mike?
Correct.
But it'll still come out of all the speakers. So what you can do is you get a lot of breaking up. And I'm sure there's somebody out there that has a 5700 XT, and they have the same problem, and they're running Dolby Atmos. There's no workaround. There's never going to be a new driver. It's just a design flaw. And the newer AMD video cards, like the 6800s, the 6900, that of course no one can buy, they have the same flaw. So I'm not even looking at those. I'm looking at NVIDIA.
Mm-hmm. I've always had good luck with NVIDIA.
I used to use them all the time, but then I was using AMD too. I kind of jump back and forth, but the sound is the deal breaker. If I'm listening to something, Mike, and it's in, let's say, like a music video from 10 years ago, and it's only in DTS, I don't want to hear the sound just drops for a second and then comes back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what this video card's doing, and it has done this since I bought it like almost a year ago. And the new video cards they have out now, the AMD, like I mentioned, they have the same design flaw because I've looked it up. I'm not falling for this stuff again. Same with the monitors, right, Mike? You get into like a 32-inch, let's say 32-inch monitor,
yeah,
1440p, even 1080p. What you got to do is, as soon as you get it home, you plug it in, you hook it up, and you go onto YouTube or some place where you can get a black screen. If you want to see absolute black, right? You don't want to see these around the edges, these white spots.
Yes.
Because that's a manufacturing defect.
Yes, it is.
And you want to, and you got to take that back like toot sweet, like as fast as you can, because that is absolutely unacceptable. And of course, with this pandemic, guess what I got? When I bought my 32-inch, I've got that problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still waiting for an RMA from Gigabyte for it. This is how this virus has affected a lot of things. So we're going to
Well, it's not just the virus,
supply
it's just a
chain break.
general trend in American manufacturing where they're trying to value engineer everything to drive up their profits, and we're getting really poor quality products dumped on us.
Well, there are a lot of really poor quality products. There's no doubt about that.
Yep.
And one of the worst, Mike, and I don't know about you, but I like toast. And toasters have got to be the worst. I don't know what it is, but I haven't had luck with a toaster in the last 7 years. I always take them back. I get the warranty, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something always happens, and you can tell you just pick it up and there's nothing there. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And you look inside at the heating elements, and they're spaced like 3/4 of an inch apart. It takes so long to, and of course the carbon Nazis, right? We can't have a 1,500 watt toaster. You get 1,200 watts. So even cranked, it's never dark enough. So you got to put it down again. It's just a real pain in the butt. Why can't anything make something, like here's the Tim Allen tool time, right? Like for a man.
Yeah.
I want to push that button, and I want to hear it go click and come back up in 5 seconds. That's what I want.
I agree.
I agree with you, too. Great. Listen, that's all I got. I was trying to get off the politics and all that nonsense because there's a lot of bad stuff going on out there.
Yeah, there is. I mean, the quality of American-produced products, and yes, the components are made overseas, but you need to understand that these companies in China and Taiwan and Japan, they'll make what they're told to make. If they're told to make a quality product like the iPhone, that's what you'll get. If somebody calls them up and says, I need the cheapest possible graphic card you can come up with, that's what they're going to get too. So it's a reality of the current state of the United States, and it's another sign that we are an empire in the middle of a collapse. Anyway, Al, we're going to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. The phone lines are all open now. Area code 512-248-8252. Call on in and join us for the rest of the show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here, and again, a friendly reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network needs your assistance to keep doing the work that we're doing, which is keeping the American people fully informed so that they can make some good choices. And as we head into what appears to be a very dark future, some of those choices are going to be very, very difficult to make indeed, and people need the facts to figure out their best course of action, and that's, of course, what Republic Broadcasting Network is about, is trying to get the facts to you. So once again, the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. Now, if you mail in a donation for $100, you will get your choice of an RBN official t-shirt or an RBN coffee mug, and you need to include, obviously, a return address. And if you want the t-shirt, we need your t-shirt size. If you send in a donation of $115, you get both of those. So, and don't forget, the Front Sight Firearms deal is still going on as well. Now, getting on back to what Al in Canada was talking about, there are a couple of factors at work as to why we are buying products that cost more and don't last as long. And part of it is what's called planned obsolescence, and that is the designing of products so that they will fail after a certain amount of time. And there was a documentary out called The Light Bulb Conspiracy or Pyramids of Waste. I don't know if it's still out there because it was very unpopular with corporate America, but they were basically pointing out that Edison-style tungsten light bulbs were deliberately designed to burn out after just 1,000 hours of operation so that you'd have to buy another one and the money would continue to flow on in. In fact, Gillette, who invented the razor company, basically said that the way to success is to have a product that people need to buy over and over and over and over again. And was absolutely right about that. So in this documentary, Pyramids of Waste, they showed a computer printer which after so many sheets of paper simply quit working, and you'd take it in for a repair and the computer store would say, well, you know, it's going to be cheaper to just buy a new printer, and that's what most people do. And it turns out there actually is a chip inside the printer that after so many sheets of paper shuts it off and says there is a problem. Okay, we're going to go back to the phones here to Ken in New York. Hello, Ken. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I found the only way to achieve happiness with computers is to stay a generation or two behind.
Yeah.
And then watch everybody, see what happens to everybody else. And I used to think companies like Asus and some of these companies that were made in Taiwan, but they actually have this stuff made in mainland China now.
Mm-hmm.
I've had nothing but trouble with drivers with them. Although, for the most part, on newer machines, I've had better success with just trying to be satisfied. Choose a motherboard that has a onboard video and onboard sound, and then hope that the drivers are going to go for a generation or two. Many times the drivers are cut for a particular operating system. You might find something available for XP or 7, and then after that they quit working, and people complain about, having all kinds of problems.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, again, that's deliberate. The business model is you buy a new computer every 5 years, and along with that, you have to buy the updated versions of all the software and the drivers, and that's something that Claire and I have had to deal with because as she works on creating her music, she'll learn a software package like Sonar or Sibelius, and then the next time her computer gets upgraded, we have to get the newer versions, and she has to learn them all over again. It's very, very frustrating for her.
Do you upgrade just for the upgrade, or do you upgrade because something went bad on you?
I upgrade when it's absolutely necessary. This machine that's in front of me here right now is Windows 7. Most of our machines are Windows 7. I've got one Windows 10 machine. It's a laptop somebody gave me, and it is so slow and pokey. The hardware is fine, but the Windows 10 is so slow and pokey, it's virtually unusable as far as I can see.
Yes, I'm still, I can't use it for the internet much anymore, but I found most of my happiness is with Windows 2000 and XP.
Mm-hmm. I loved XP. I absolutely loved XP. I have XP running in a sandbox on this machine. So I can go back to nostalgia, the good old days of Windows XP.
Well, it wasn't really that far behind because all versions of Windows, have their problems with them. But it just seems that for the internet now, I've found true happiness using a Pi on Linux.
Oh yeah, I just got myself a Pi. I'm just starting to work with it. Ken, I'm going to put you on hold. Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these few words. Welcome back to our show here, and we still have some phone lines open right now. They're starting to fill up. Area code 512-248-8252, and we're talking with Ken in New York, and we were just getting onto the subject of the Raspberry Pi. If you haven't seen it, it's an amazing little tiny machine, and I had a couple of them on a Wahoo, but unfortunately one of the boxes from my office got lost in the move, but a friend of mine just sent me a Raspberry Pi 4, which I'm in the process of getting set up and playing around with. And the thing about the Raspberry Pi, it reminds me of how much fun computers used to be back in the days of the Commodore 64 and the Apple II and even the Amiga, as opposed to the, sort of metropolis, we must serve the machine mentality that we have today. So, Ken, what have you got to add?
Well, the Linux, I noticed compared to XP and 7, I've used the plug-in drawer system with the hard disks.
Yes.
Going back to 1994, and every once in a while you do have to change them because they get worn out.
Yes.
But so I can take a machine, have XP on it, pull a drawer out with the hard disk and put another one in that's set up for Windows 7. And I can sit there, I can do that with several operating systems,
Mm-hmm.
and then see whether I got a problem or not, whether a motherboard can handle it. With the Linux, I noticed, unlike Windows, I almost have not found anything that it will not do as far as playing videos or YouTube or anything of that nature.
Oh, it's much faster.
We're
Linux
always
is
getting
much faster than anything Windows put out.
Yeah, I'm working towards setting up a Linux in one of my plug-in drawers so I can use it with my main machine.
Mm-hmm.
The strange part about the Raspberry Pi is that even though it only runs at 1.6 gig only, and it is still faster, a lot faster than Windows is when it comes to actual downloading. Or
Yes.
It's amazing.
It is.
And while it's true that I'm kind of lost as far as all of the little terminal things that you have to do occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to do it, but you kind of sucked me into it a little bit. I just couldn't put up with the garbage on the internet. The browsers weren't working. There was always something wrong.
Yes.
I had like 3 different browsers. I've been using Opera, and I like Vivaldi now. That's my favorite because they're still developing, and I think Opera got bought out by the Chinese.
Okay.
Well, that's about it.
All right. Well, thank you.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. One more thing. When you talk about machines going bad on you, you're familiar with Intel motherboards? They have numbers on them.
Yes.
Most of the brands of machine, if you look inside of the motherboard, it'll say like an Intel 960 or 950.
Yes.
It seemed like they started going awry with drivers and things not working right when they got into the mid-900 series.
Mm-hmm.
But if I have a machine that says like an Intel 845, which was a fairly good P4 processor, those you can pick those boards up and you can just have an extra motherboard, and if something goes wrong and you can't get it working, you can always throw another motherboard in and try it, try to fix it that way.
Well, the days when I enjoyed tearing the machine apart and getting in there with the tools and everything are kind of in my past. And when a machine really dies and is unrecoverable, I mean, I'll clean the contacts on the cables and the cards and the memory chips and everything like that. But if that doesn't bring it back, I just move on to a new machine and eat whatever the costs are going to be for the updated software. But I miss XP. I love Windows 7. I know it's no longer officially supported. Anyway, Ken, we're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over to Brandon in California. Hello, Brandon. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Can you hear me okay?
I can barely hear you.
Okay. Well, I've got a computer issue, I guess. I wasn't planning on calling in, but when you mentioned planned obsolescence, I just wanted to share. There are actual elevators out in the field that are planned to shut down every month, built into the software, and you literally have to dispatch a tech to go out and reset the elevator.
Mm-hmm.
And building owners and management are becoming aware of this, and they are increasingly demanding that the product that are being installed in their buildings are not proprietary. But that's a dirty little secret of the elevator trade is, and those calls, by the way, if you're not under contract, they're hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
To go out. Since we're on that subject, I wanted to recommend a guy on YouTube, Louis Rossman. He's fighting for right to repair on Apple products, and he's under a lot of attack. There's lobbyists that are paid, whatever amounts of money to crush him. In fact, there's been strange fires being set outside of his business in Manhattan. So I highly recommend, if anyone's curious about right to repair, Louis Rossman on YouTube. Kind of
Yeah, I'm a big fan of right to repair, and of course, at my age, my first car was a Volkswagen Beetle that you could just repair with basic tools. You could replace the fan belt literally with an old pair of pantyhose. I mean, that was easy to repair, and I got kind of an education as to how products are being designed today when I had a Nissan Xterra, which was leaking oil from underneath the valve covers, and I figured, well, I'll just get a couple of valve cover gaskets, and that will fix it. And then I found out that the valve cover gaskets are all part of the same thing as the head gasket. So the only way to cure the oil leak from the valve covers is you have to basically take the entire top of the engine off, and I was not happy about that. Anyway, Brandon, I'm going to let you go because the phone quality is not very good at all, and we're having trouble hearing you. And we're going to switch to Mike in Kentucky. Hello, Mike. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, well, I was just going to say the cheapest thing to extend the life of a computer that I've seen, and it seems to me like there could be a class action lawsuit over this because the vast majority of computers that are put on the market, from my experience, do not ever have enough memory.
Mm-hmm.
When you buy a computer, wherever it may be, they never have enough memory. They have enough for you to, get up on the internet and do some basic stuff. But when you start opening up tabs or doing video editing or anything like that, you run up against the.
Oh, yes, you do.
Go into the Control-Alt-Delete, and you look at your memory usage, and it's sitting there. If it's above about 60%, you need more memory. And so it just already budget another $30 to $60, maybe more, depending on what kind you're getting, and try to double the memory, or at least go from, say, 3. I just upgraded a 3 gig Windows 10 laptop like you're talking about, and it only had 3 gig in it, and I maxed it out to 8, and it's like a 7-year-old computer. And boy, is it not. It's really soft.
Well, I've maxed out the memory on this Windows 10 laptop. I have, through the little porthole in the underside there, and it really didn't help speed it up any.
Well, there's a thing called a debloater, which you lose some of the features if you use that.
Okay.
Debloater. There's a bunch of different ones that you can get. Like, it may disable the search feature, which is very irritating. But if you know where to look in the menus to find stuff, or you can get another.
I'm just not using this machine, and I may ultimately put Linux on it if the BIOS will let me do that.
Sounds like a good plan, but yeah, I'm still using Windows 7 too, and I just fixed the computer by doing that, going from 4 gig to 8 gig, and man, it just made all the difference in the world. That's what I found is that there's some computers that get sold that just have an anemic amount of memory. Really, Windows 10 needs more than 8 gig, I think. It really needs more like 16.
Okay. Yeah, it's horribly bloated. All of Windows operating systems are resource hogs.
Yeah, and you can change the boot sector or the registry for what boots up if you don't use it. Like if you don't use, all the word processors and stuff like that, you can do a registry editor. There's different ones out there. I don't want to recommend any one particular. You might know of some of them, but by changing what boots up, it not only boots up quicker, but it's not running in the background. So
yeah.
You can disable the Windows Store and all this other stuff with these, these debloaters. But some of them, unfortunately, they disable too much from what I've seen videos of. I've never used several of them that I've seen videos of, but they're just ridiculous amount of stuff that most people don't use on there that it loads up to have it at the ready, that you don't need it. Anyway, I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks an awful lot for the phone call. The phone lines are now completely open. Area code 512-248-8252. And during the last commercial break, I did find that video, The Light Bulb Conspiracy / Pyramids of Waste, and I have posted it to the front of whatreallyhappened.com. And it's definitely worth looking at to realize how these corporations that are making these products make them to fail, make them to wear out, so you have to constantly come back and just buy new versions of whatever it is, so that you're working your entire life away just to stay where you are and not really improve your life all that much. Okay, now, here we go. So, let's see. let's see, talking about the George Floyd case. I'm seeing all this stuff come on in about this TikTok model star out there saying they're going to burn everything down. I want to talk a little bit about whether or not the United States is a well-managed nation. And I think one of the examples I want to point on out is, let's say that post-COVID lockdown, mask, everything, you go out to a hamburger stand and you look at the menu and it says Super Burger for $5. And you get the burger and you really love it and it's really good, and you pay the $5 and you go home happy. Well, that's the way normal business works. With the U.S. government, it's a little different, because you'll go to the government's burger place and you'll look at the menu and it says the Super Burger and it's $5, and you have the burger and it's okay, and it's well, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. It's a good burger and everything. And then when you finished eating it, the government comes back and says, well, look, we miscalculated what it was going to cost for us to produce that burger, and you owe us another $2. Now, to me, that is bad management and bad planning, and yet we see it all the time with, for example, military procurement, where they'll come on out and say, well, the F-35 is only going to cost so many billions of dollars, and here we are, 1.3 trillion later, and it's a piece of junk. As burgers go, it's not working at all. And I think we need to stop looking at the government as somehow immune from the same judgments that we would put on corporations for how well they're managed. Now, in the real world, when a corporation is managed badly, they go out of business, and they make way for somebody with better business sense to come on in and provide the same services at a reasonable cost. That's competition. It keeps quality up. It keeps prices down. And only with government are we expected to just go along with this abuse of being told we're only going to pay so many billions of dollars for a program, and then the cost just soars way out of control, and we're expected to just pony that up with our future taxes. And like I said to that earlier caller, being a patriot means you're loyal to your country and its people at all times, but to the government only when it deserves it. And from where I sit, and feel free to call on in and question me on this, this is not a well-run country. It's got serious, serious management problems, and it's time for the American people, the customer base, to basically look at the government and say, yeah, this is not working out very well at all. This is a terrible, terrible state of affairs in business. Okay, so anyway, phone lines are open, 512-248-8252. I guess everybody's still recovering from last Easter. And let's see, full show. We're just getting an update on Ukraine. It's saying tempers are flaring at the Russian border. Who is provoking who? Well, I think the answer to that is very obvious. Ukraine is provoking Russia by attacking the Donbass. The United States is provoking Russia by providing military support. And let's not forget all those years ago when the United States sponsored a coup d'etat that brought down the duly elected legitimate government of Ukraine and installed a junta, and really just started this whole mess. All right, we're going to take a phone call now. Dustin in New Jersey, welcome back to our show. What is on your mind?
Mike, actually, I just wanted to respond to Al. Your 5700 XT is great at crypto mining for hash rates.
Yes.
So if you want to get rid of it, you should put it on eBay, because it's actually faster than the 6800 XT that's actually out now, if you can find one at a reasonable price. Yeah. Hey, Mike, the problem with the component shortages, it also didn't help with the trade war.
No, it didn't.
So, yeah, there's component shortages and everything. I mean, it's just process. I mean, I think it's going to start settling down probably toward the second half of the year. But, you can't even get a PlayStation 5. I mean, unless you want to, pay over $1,500 on eBay, which is there's no reason to be paying that much. Just wait.
Yeah.
But Mike, I do have a 5700 XT. Al, I have a Sapphire 5700 XT Nitro, but I don't have Dolby Atmos. I'm more of a two-speaker person when it comes to
same here. When I'm doing the mix down of Claire's music, I use stereo. I mean, I've got a subwoofer on the floor, and I'm either using that or I'm using headphones. I don't need the surround sound because it doesn't transmit well when we send it out to Claire's audience, whether it's at the church or anywhere like that. So I do all my mixing in stereo.
But I have 5 computers, and I'll give you one of mine because it's your favorite. It's running Windows 98 SE.
Thank you. No.
Believe it or not, Mike. I bought it like a year ago, all brand new stuff in boxes. It's a Pentium 2 450 with 128 megs of RAM on a genuine Intel BX board. It's got a Voodoo 3 16 meg, and I don't know if you ever heard of this company. You used to work for NASA. L'Oreal? Yeah,
I do. Dustin, stay on the line. Dustin, stay on the line. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today. We're talking with Dustin in New Jersey. And Dustin, apparently Al from Canada called back in, and he says that he just plugs his HDMI into the Dolby receiver for Atmos. And he says he has the same video card that you do. So that may be a little bit of helpful hint for you right there.
Well, I'm going to do some research. Like I said, I don't have a Dolby Atmos setup. But you know what the problem is? Every time a new card comes out, but this card's not new, there's always driver issues.
Yes.
There's issues with all hardware. Sometimes it takes you'll never get them all fixed in the card's generation. That's the problem. They're still updating BIOS. My motherboard, I got a 3800.
I know.
Yeah,
and it seems like, with Microsoft, by the time they get all the bugs out of an operating system like Windows XP, then they move you to Windows 7. They get all the problems fixed with Windows 7. Then they shove Windows 8 at you and so on to Windows 10. And it's like, you've got this running smoothly. Let us work with this for a little bit longer, please.
And before I get off the phone, Mike, real quick, back on Windows 98 SE, I'm not using IDE mechanical hard drives because those things you can't get anymore.
Yeah.
You know what they got out? They actually have IDE to compact flash or SD card adapters. You just snap into the IDE slot.
Wow.
And you can use solid state. Yeah, so there's no access time. That's incredible, right?
That is incredible. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, it's IDE to compact flash if anybody has adapters. If anybody has an old computer with IDE, because remember, they went to SATA after that.
Yeah.
Or now NVMe now. But, Mike, have a good show and a good night.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch to Lauren in Ohio. Hello, Lauren. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, I was just going to say the American people, they aren't the customers. They are the saps. They are getting soaked. I mean, first it was $900 billion, then it was $2 trillion, now it's $4 trillion. They are just, it's like they just keep refilling the kitty with your labor.
Yes.
You have got to stop giving them your money if you expect to ever have control or the fruit of your labor. And now they're bringing in your replacement population, just like they trained them to take your job. Honey, they're occupying underneath your bridges. Your veterans can't even get up under a bridge. I mean, and whose fault is this? It's our fault.
Yes.
We're still giving them the money. We're still doing what they say. They're saying they're coming to kill us, and we stick our arms out for the vaccine. I mean, come on. Have you seen that SPARS report? SPARS 2025 to
Yes, I did.
Oh, my God. I mean, and the thing is, they tell us what they're doing, and then they go ahead and do it, and then everybody's surprised when it happens. And the only people they're killing is white Europeans and Americans because they've got the replacements coming on in. Yeah. So what I'm saying is people had better start saying no. You better, and I'll tell you what, for those of you that took the vaccines, you better start doing some recuperation, buddy. Super Silver, 30 parts per million, Glenn Parnham, you guys should get in a relationship with him. He does some other radio station stuff. You guys, it's a great product. It's like a zapper in a bottle. You need to deactivate.
Okay, Lauren, I hate to cut you off. We're at the end of the show. Thank you very much for the phone call. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. He's got Roger Landry on as his guest tonight. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please, please, please donate. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.